Here we go. We have the three musketeers in one place. The great, the dynamic, the powerful Mr. Angel Garcia, and we got the pretty powerful Mr. Jose Luis
I
Morales. How
heard
you
my
doing,
name.
brother? Yeah. I've been summoned like the Batmobile, right? Like
Man, this
Batman.
this background's a little on the scary side, guys. I
No,
It
see.
the
is.
background looks super sick. I'm like, dude, this is like real podcasting and professional setup you got there.
We are professionals. Yes, we're becoming professionals. So I wanted to get all of us together because I've been receiving some emails, some text messages, and some phone calls with regards to these TCPA rule changes. And the first person that I thought to speak to was Angel. So, first and foremost, before we begin this conversation, I want everybody to be clear on something. I am not an attorney. Angel's not an attorney. Jose is not an attorney. This is not legal advice. All we're going to be discussing today is our understanding, primarily Angel's understanding, of these rule changes and how it will affect those who actively and proactively engage in prospecting, whether they're using, some dialing system or just making outbound kind of buying leads and then calling those leads and things of that nature, because these rule changes do affect that, practice of doing so. So first, Angel, if you could real quickly share with everybody why anybody would want to listen to you about this.
Well, first thing is the as some of your audience may already know, I run and operate the Enzo dialer, and obviously this is a question that's come up quite a bit. One of the things that we have to do as a dialing solution is be able to provide answers to some of these questions, or at least have some general knowledge on it. So that would mean that we would have to be equipped with good attorneys that we talk to, that are leaders in the space. And we have done that, and we've aligned ourselves with some of the biggest attorneys that are in the telecom space to make sure that we're getting properly advised on how to handle these questions and situations, and then how to operate as a compliant company, and then to help our customers as well. So I'm going to be sharing information that has been given to me. And as Aaron said, I'm not an attorney. I'm answering the questions the best I can and reading right off of the FCC's information that they've provided. And my interpretation is not legal advice. The legal advice is basically always going to be best from your own attorneys, and to make sure that you're getting your own proper advice, because everybody still has their own calling practices. Now, that being said, I've done a lot of homework for all of us, and as I mentioned, I've got some great attorneys. One of the leading guys in the space that has given me pretty direct information on this very topic that I'm excited to share with you guys.
I love it.
Love it. So let's maybe if we can begin at what was in place prior to these rule changes going into effect. So, Angel, maybe if you can paint a picture of what the kind of lead slash dialing systems slash, you know, various different ways of reaching out, what that looked like prior to these rule changes. So then we can get clear on, okay, what are these changes and what could be some consequences or ways that agents can, make sure that they are positioning themselves to not only, continue to engage in activity, but make sure that they're not doing anything that wouldn't be compliant.
Yeah, well, FCC and the TCPA, basically what those are is Telecommunications Consumer Protection Act. And then the FCC is Federal Communications, what is it? Federal Communications Commission. So they basically set out the rules for what can and cannot be done, and it's all in place to be able to protect consumers from unwanted communications, right? So the TCPA is in place to be able to help people out with that. A lot of anything that gets abused is usually going to get regulated, right? And this is just another example of that. So really, to understand what is in place or what was in place prior is, the biggest, the simplest one to keep in mind is unwanted calls and DNC, right? TCPA is there to make sure that people aren't doing things that they're not supposed to. TCPA is very much against unwanted solicitation with people that have expressed consent. I'm sorry, expressed that they do not want to be reached out to. If people are in the DNC and then people are still robo dialing them and abusing their rights, that's what the TCPA is there to protect, and they have fines associated with such. The problem that I guess they have is that there's been a loophole that's been exploited, and that loophole has been getting abused left and right. And I'll share with you guys some examples of how it's been abused. That's literally put in their statement as they're fixing this loophole with this new regulation.
So there was a loophole and it was being exploited. Now, my understanding, and again, you are the one that I'm deferring to here because I did, some homework in preparation for us having this conversation. My understanding is part of that loophole was these online platforms who get kind of opt-ins from people. They're allowed to, because of the language, then give that information to multiple different individuals, either sell the information to multiple different people or multiple different agents or whatever they were doing with it. And that's what results in people getting hammered by like a bunch of different people, phones, texts, emails, things of that nature. Is that right?
That's exactly right. I'll read something that I think is helpful to kind of like understand what's been going on. Um, so this is directly in, and this is literally from the FCC. They said the FCC adopted new rules in December 2023 to combat unwanted and illegal telemarketing calls and texts, and including rule that closed the lead generator loophole. This rule expressly prohibits lead generators, texters, and callers from using a single consumer written consent to inundate consumers with unwanted telemarketing robocalls, robotexts from dozens of sellers when consumers visit comparison shopping websites.
Interesting.
So
So what I take from that is, let's say somebody goes to one of the a site, whether it be
Zillow,
something,
paper lead.
yeah, Zillow or paper leads, or well, paper leads are different because people kind of opt in, sort of thing. But Zillow or like a Z buyer or something like that. And because those companies are in the business of selling data, the way that the loophole was is if somebody opts in once, then it's like, okay, cool. Then we can send it to like a whole bunch of people. And then those people end up getting bombarded with phones, text, emails, and all that stuff.
I will give you a perfect example because they actually listed an example on their document. So this and I can even present this if you guys want to read this because it's pretty interesting. Here, let me see.
Share your screen.
Okay, so I'm not going to be able to share my screen because it's asking me to quit and reopen, so I will not do that.
It's fine.
But I'll go ahead and read it. So just so that way you guys understand, this is directly from their verbiage. This requirement ensures that consumers consent to only sellers they wish to hear from, and will stop the abuses that we saw. For example, in Earth Access, where the websites at issue included TCPA consent disclosures whereby the consumer consented to receive robocalls from marketing partners, in quotations. Those marketing partners were only visible to the consumer if the consumer clicked on a specific hyperlink to a second website that contained the names of 5,329 entities that had complete, and this is now me, that had complete access to destroy them with robocalls and with telemarketing calls. And then keep in mind, when you now need to remove access from somebody, right, like revoke that access, well, how is one person supposed to revoke access, right? I said, hey, I'm looking for a mortgage, went to a comparison website and just said, oh, you know what, let me see if I can compare with these two different sites. And they're very good about capturing information, and then afterwards, now they sent it out to every single mortgage company in the country, and every single mortgage company in the country is now robo dialing you and blowing you up. You now need to say, hey, put me on your DNC, 5,329 times in hopes that every single one of them got the message and is now removing you. Now, there was another loophole behind that they said that you must revoke access sometimes even in a certain way, that sometimes telling them verbally even wouldn't even be sufficient based off of what I'm seeing, because what it says here is that they now need to make it very clear, and any form of them asking to be removed is now effective.
I know. You know what's interesting, Angel? What it makes me think of is I heard a quote one time and said like marketers ruin everything. Where like email used to be a thing, and then they like wow, like just like abused it, and then that changed. And so, based on what I'm gathering from you, this is actually in response to smart people in the lead generation business who are selling leads finding a loophole which allowed them to sell that information to a ton of people, and that resulted in kind of a second third level consequence and people just getting bombarded. So this is actually to help the consumer. I also would imagine that would actually it actually leads to that loophole leads to actually not as better quality leads because it's going out to all these people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like one of the so that's
But
what
it
was
also drives
happening
the
in,
cost, right? Because
yeah, it drives the cost up, which we'll talk about. Yeah, I'm clear on that. So okay, so that's what it was previously. So let's talk about now with your understanding, again, not legal advice, your understanding of these rule changes and how it applies specifically. Because I've seen videos, people talking to like insurance agents who are like buying lists and calling. I've seen people talk like, how it specifically applies to like agent lead generation. What are the changes and how does it apply?
well, the changes, or let's say, for example, if you're buying leads on pay per lead, that's going to be a problem. If you're relying on pay per lead as your as a big source of business for you, that is going to become a problem, because at first, just like anything else, there may be some confusion in the marketplace, and there may be companies that need to adapt. Many companies will be able to easily adapt. Some will have a lot of trouble based off of how abusive they've been to their practices, or at least with this loophole, right? So how it affects you, right? Like Zillow's actually in this conversation with the FCC and in the TCPA, and it's written in there. So Zillow's brought up an issue and said, "Hey, well, we do a lot of live transfers, right? We live transfer over to an agent. Is that going to affect us?" They said it's not going to affect them based off of what I'm reading. And it says, in fact, I can
So
kind of
that
go
could
over it
be
real
another
quick.
loophole, basically, like meaning like if
But it's still one to one.
It's still 1-to-1.
Yeah, because remember, you can't live transfer over to 5,237 people,
yeah,
right?
well,
So you can only live transfer to one person to get that consent. So you can have a marketing company still generate your leads for you, but the way that a pay per lead company will oftentimes work is that they need to provide. They basically they cannot randomly assign that right to market to that homeowner or to that person without disclosing who you are. So they now need to say, "Hey, Jose Luis Morales is the person that is the marketing partner
we're gonna
that
reach
you're
out to
being
you,
connected
basically.
with." Yeah, and they have to
Yeah. So what
individually check off. So, like if HomeLight refers 3 agents, they have to individually say, "Yes, I'm good to go with Jose. Yes, I'm good to hear from Aaron. Yes, I'm good to hear from Angel." No,
and truthfully, I think that's great because like in the past when we had a year where we did a bunch of business with them. I think we paid them like $50,000 in referral fees, but towards the end it started to get to where it wasn't even like an enjoyable experience for me because that lead would come in, they would get hammered by like a bunch of they tell you they gave it to 3, but it was probably more than that. It's probably like 8. And as the consumer's experience actually isn't great.
right.
And it lets them know it's like it really is interesting because their model's not really focused on what the consumer experience is. It's just like, hey, let me give it to as
'Cause you
many people as
convert it.
possible in hopes that
Hopefully,
one of
one of
them gets
those
it.
8 people can convert.
Well, hopefully one of them will convert it. So it actually leads to a better experience. But then another downstream consequence of that is that the leads are going to be more expensive.
They're going to be more expensive for sure in this method, right? But keep in mind, like if let's say for example, Zillow's a big lead provider in the real estate space, right? Probably to a lot of the people in your audience or connected to your audience. The way that Zillow is doing their business, they're able to bypass it because their concern was, hey, we don't know which agent we're going to be transferring the call to because we transfer it out to maybe 10 different agents. First one to get is like connect is the one that gets the call, right, or something like that, right? Now, if that's
Yeah.
the case, that now means that their concern is like, I can't put down which marketing partner they're going to hear from, but they're still getting a verbal recorded line opt-in when they do transfer that call. So that allows that to now be okay based off of the document.
Talk a little bit about how this affects dialing systems, because that's the business that you're in.
Yeah.
And there's some other dialing systems that are out there that a lot of you guys are pretty familiar with and probably utilize. So like, how does this affect dialing systems, and if an agent's using them, what do they need to do to kind of increase the chances or the probability that they'll be compliant?
So here's the rules, right? So auto dialing software. So this new rule isn't necessarily to go like isn't a regulation necessarily against robo dialing and this and that. It is, but it's not necessarily the focus. The focus point is to close that loophole, right? So they use the word auto dialer in there. Now, auto dialer is interesting, right? Because if again, you have to go back to the core of when these laws went in place. When these laws went in place, they were trying to restrict the use of unwanted calls and spam, right? The way spam was done in the past was very, very interesting because what they would do is they had, let's say, for example, robocalls that originally went rampant and went crazy. Those are illegal, right? Under certain circumstances without opt-in. Now, auto dialing, same thing. Now, AI like calling as well, like those are all classified under like that's all classified under robo dialing now. So what happens is if you have, let's say, auto dialer that's now being no longer allowed or was never really allowed, what does that actually mean, and how does this affect the different dialing systems that are out there? Well, the big thing that you have to look out for is the system that I'm using, whether I'm using that feature or not, right? If your system has the capability of doing it, then you are technically operating illegally. Now, what is that system that they're trying to stop, right? What is auto dialing? What is robocalling? Well, does my system have the ability to do robocalling, right? Like whatever software I'm using, I don't believe Mojo, Redx, or Vulcan do, right? They don't have robo dialing. Robo dialing is basically where you can make a robot make a phone call and say, "Hey, press one for if you'd like to be connected to this person," right? That's like a robo dial.
And isn't it like AI generated voice and also like
Yeah,
like automated messages like slide dial or things like that that just like push a message right away?
right. So anything that has a pre-recorded voice that's speaking on your behalf. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Hmm.
There's dialing systems out there that do that. So even if you're not using that feature, it is still illegal based off of the document, right? So any system that has the capability of doing that is now under illegal practice. Any businesses that's using it for any calls, right, that is now at risk. Now, the word auto dialer is also illegal, but here's the key: what is an auto dialer? An auto dialer back in the day was a system that you would use that would generate phone numbers for you to call and then dial them, right? Yes, anything that does pre-recorded voices, which is a voicemail drop, would count in. I saw that pop up in a comment. Um,
Yep.
so auto dialer. What is an auto dialer? An auto dialer is something that basically generates phone numbers in any sequential order or random order. Where, let's say, for example, it's literally going to create the phone number for you to dial and then dial it. That's what an auto dialer is. That is not what the Enzo dialer is, and that is not what some other dialing systems are. Right? An auto dialer, the key difference, and then this is there's case law already in place. Actually, there's a case with Facebook in 2021 where they defined what an auto dialer is and what it is not. So I'll read this so that way you guys can understand what that actually says and is, right? So an auto dialer definition must have the capacity to store or produce telephone numbers using a random or sequential number generator and dial those numbers. So let's go into that for a second. Must have the capacity to store or produce telephone numbers using a random or sequential number generator. So either or, right? So right here you have must have the capacity to store or to produce telephone numbers. So if you're storing phone numbers and then calling them, that would be a problem. But that is the or section, right? You can store or produce telephone numbers. The part where it's like and dial those numbers, like using a random or sequential number generator, that is a must, right? Where you have store or produce, that's an or, like it could be either one of those two, but both must have a ability to generate phone numbers for you to call. So if you are using a system where you have to load your own phone numbers, right? Like you have to grab a list and upload it yourself, that does not qualify in the eyes of the SEC based off of this reading and based off of what our attorney has shared with us as an auto dialing system. And that is backed
I
up
understand.
by case
So
law.
to so then let me understand correctly. I'm sorry to interrupted you because I'm following what you're saying. So let's say an agent is calling expireds, they're calling for sale by owners. If instead of having, because I know they have a feature where you can push a button and it just like, or the dialer like automatically loads that and then you can call. But if you go in and you manually do that, that doesn't apply.
So if you're say that one more time, because this is specifically to for sale by owners, right? And
Or let's say or expires, because I know people call those too. Or let's say you're getting probate leads or whatever your lead sources are. So for those agents out there that are calling those lead sources proactively and aggressively, like what do they need to do to make sure that they're in compliance?
first thing you have to make sure of, like above all else, so TCPA still has restrictions of calling people that are on the DNC, right? So DNC has always been the case and is still the case with this new law. But outside of DNC, you're able to dial those people manually or with a dialing solution. As long as it doesn't generate the phone numbers for you. And if you're uploading and creating your own list in order for you to be able to dial, and it's not just doing it by random, then you're per the code here and per the writing, okay. And again, the big thing is that they have Supreme Court ruling, and I also want to share this with you because this is also part of something that you got to keep in mind. There's different rules and regulations based off of like on a state level versus a federal level, right? So there's certain states that may have additional rules that they have at their own at their local levels that's different than federal. What we're talking about right now is on the federal level. On the federal level, there's rules that have been already put in place, and Facebook was one of the biggest ones that actually set the tone for how this is all viewed. In 2021, they have Facebook versus DUGUID, DUGUID. I don't know how you would pronounce that, but it clarified that devices must actually generate random or sequential numbers to qualify as auto dialers. Preloaded number systems do not count. So after that case law, courts generally agree that systems requiring customer supplied numbers or that only determine dialing order are not auto dialers. So if you have an auto dialing system that you've you've uploaded your own list to, that doesn't qualify because they didn't generate those phone numbers. So that's a very like what you define as an auto dialing system is different than what the law states an auto dialing system is. That's the best way I can
That's
explain it.
wonderful.
I understand. So, like, in other words, based on your understanding, because nobody here is an attorney, that by
We have to
if
be very
I'm
careful with how we're saying certain
very
things.
careful,
So
yeah. So if I'm pulling data, whether they be probate leads, expireds for sale by owners, and inputting that data into something that allows me to call those people, then based on what you're saying, like based on your understanding and interpretation, like we should be good.
basically, yeah. So and this is look again. This is what we're reading right here. It says auto dialer is not a dialing system that makes calls for you, right? At a faster rate or dials the numbers for you. An auto dialing system is a system that is generating the phone
Ran
number to dial for
ah,
you.
And let's say explain what that means, like, because I don't know if even, I know most agents don't know how any of this stuff works. So like, what's the difference between what you just said? Like, is it generating the numbers
It's
or is it just calling through numbers that are
no,
provided?
no, it's generating numbers. So an auto dialer per the law, like what the law defines as an auto dialer, is something that literally says, all right, right now I'm going to call phone numbers 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Now the next number I'm going to call is going to be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Right?
At
At
random, and
random.
the software does.
Just throwing numbers in place and creating combinations of phone numbers and just calling whatever the hell it wants to call, and whatever it hits, it hits. That's what the law defines as an auto dialing system. A smart dialing system like the one that we have, right, with the Enzo dialer, where you're able to dramatically increase your contacts and so on, does not qualify as an auto dialer and is compliant.
I understand, because in your dialing system, you have to upload the data or the numbers to actually call. It's not randomly
The
generating
thing
them.
that
There's nothing random
The thing
about
that
it.
makes it compliant is that under the definition of that case law, it doesn't qualify as an auto dialer because an auto dialer would have to generate the different combinations of phone numbers. And this doesn't do that. It's almost like when I go to my accountant, I tell him, hey, can I do this? He'll go, well, look, case law on this actually already addressed that. And according to that case law, it says that this, and this. So you can do whatever you want, but look, you should take this case law into consideration. So that's basically what's happening here with the auto dialer. They're having to go back to different situations where they defined the what an auto dialer is, and then making it applicable to the changes today.
So other dialing systems, yeah, exactly. And then other dialing systems other than Enzo, even though in our opinion Enzo is the best, right? So other dialing systems,
That's also in definition on official writing. It says out there, Enzo dialer is the best. Just in case anyone's
exactly,
wondering.
yeah, yeah. Just but like they, based on my understanding, they function similarly in the broadest sense of they don't automatically generate
Yeah, most systems don't
numbers.
automatically generate phone numbers for them, which is why they're out there, right? Because you would wonder, is like, well, why is there even businesses out there that provide this solution if it's not legal? It's because most of them are not illegal. Now, I will say that there is systems out there that are going to be that qualify as illegal, right? Because it's not only that they generate phone numbers, right? So that's for auto dialer. But if you're doing if you have the ability to also, let's say, for example, do pre-recorded voices, or if you're doing AI, like if you're doing any pre-recorded voice drops of any kind, that is still a violation, right? That
Yeah,
is still
and
a
if you're
violation.
saying,
You need consent.
am I yeah, and am I understanding you correctly? So obviously, automated voice things is done. You can't do that at all. You need people to opt in. But if the CRM even has that, or if the dialer even has that feature, is the whole CRM not compliant? I mean, the
Yeah,
whole dialing system not compliant?
yeah, because now you're using a system that is classified as an illegal system, right? So
Interesting.
that is a common thing that you see in a lot of different platforms out there. Now, again, this is how we're reading it, right? So I got to always continue giving that legal disclosure and tiptoe around what I'm saying here, because I want to make sure that I'm not saying anything I shouldn't be. Um, or naming any specific companies, but you guys also are aware of a lot of different businesses that do voicemail drops, and that also have features where you have a pre-recorded voice when a call doesn't connect, right? So things to keep in mind, because that now qualifies and puts you at risk.
So what I'm imagining, though, wouldn't you say that with a high degree of probability, those other dialing systems who have those features will just eliminate the feature? You won't be able to do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, well, first thing is they shouldn't have had it, because that is not that part is not new. Right. What's new is
Mm,
the opt-in, right? Like like the release for marketing. Everything else that's been discussed. A lot of the questions that have come up has been because the word auto dialer was on there, right? That you need marketing consent to be able to use an auto dialer now going forward. Well, it's just like robo dialing, right? So auto dialer, again, what an auto dialer is not what most people have been using. What most people have been using. But if you've already been doing voicemail drops and doing things like that, you've already been technically doing things that you haven't been supposed to be doing, right? It just wasn't
I
necessarily
understand.
called out before.
Yeah, so it's not as though like all of those other dialing systems will disappear. They'll just eliminate features so they're compliant. I imagine is what will happen.
Yeah, well, it's business practice, right? Because also keep in mind, like, even if, all right, let me give you an example. If you have an AI dialing system, a pre-recorded voicemail drops, all of these different things, if you have these in place, that doesn't mean it's illegal. It's how you're using it that can be illegal, right? So that the company will likely not eliminate that feature on their system because how you're using it is up to you. So if you're cold,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, because you if someone opts in, the dialing solution isn't controlling who your opt-ins are. They don't have any idea who your opt-ins are. You're loading your own list, and if you loaded up people that didn't opt in, and you're using AI calling or robo calling or pre-recorded voicemail drops and so on, that still makes it illegal. It's kind of like I can have a gun, and it's not illegal to have a gun, but if I'm using a gun illegally, as in shooting innocent people, that's a problem.
And it's illegal. Yeah, so it's interesting. As we're speaking live, this is so cool that we have people in the comments. Somebody said she just noticed one of those other dialing systems, the voice drop and callback message has from being required, right? They removed it, which is interesting. Yeah, so I mean, that's more with a high degree of probability. Like that's what will happen as time progresses. Now, Jason Walters asked, you can still voicemail drop with consent. Yes,
Yes,
based on
with
my
consent, you
understanding.
can do most things, right?
Yeah, the issue, hey,
So let me
as in
ask this:
life, with consent, you can do most things.
Yeah,
That's how that works.
with consent, you have the ability to do quite a
what's the
bit.
definition of consent,
Yeah,
Angel?
You have to do a one-to-one opt-in, and that's literally like the what this new regulation is all about. Is that you have one-to-one consent,
What does
meaning
that
that
mean?
I go So
explain
one-to-one
that.
consent, like when you have the website, right? You go to any website and you have that little checkbox that says check here, and then you're authorizing us to reach out to you in many different methods that would include text messaging and so on, right? That's on almost any disclosure whenever you're opting into something and providing your email. Um, well, that usually says you give us and our marketing partners access to be able to reach out to you, right? Well, you can no longer do that. Marketing partners is excluded. Now I'm giving you, the marketing company that's actually listed, the ability to contact me and only exclusively you by law, right? Like you can't just create different verbiage that allows you to say, oh, well, I'm still going to give it out to 5 different people. The only way you can give it to
Yeah,
5 different people, if you one-to-one, now you're going to have to literally go one by one. At least that's what this law is looking to do and put in place, is that you have to come in and say, hey, I'm physically clicking something and agreeing to each individual person on here that's going to contact me. And if I'm not being live transferred over to one of them or to 3 of them at the same time, which is highly unlikely, then you can't, they cannot reach out to me. And I have to have the ability to select and choose which one of these partners I would be able to opt into. And you can't have them unnamed, right? You can't have a blanket and say, hey, I have a page of 400 people that may reach out to you. That also does not, like, they have to, like, one by one click on who's going to be allowed to reach out to them. So that changes marketing as a whole, the way that we know it currently.
yeah. So the whole model, Jose, of basically these aggregators of data and getting people to opt in, and then they get one opt in and they can sell it to like a zillion people and pass it to like whoever they want. That based on these rule changes will die.
So
And instead, what will happen is with a high degree of probability is if it has to be one-to-one opt-in, in order to be that agent that they send it to, the cost of that, I think, is going to go up dramatically. So anybody who's in the game of getting leads from these sources that are utilizing this methodology, I would expect you to see like 50% increases in the cost of those leads.
So here's what I want to share, because I think this is a beautiful thing to talk about, right? So if you are, so this law, and it's funny because we've gotten a lot of questions on it from the dialing perspective, because everybody saw the word auto dialer on there and now thinks that there's a big issue. But again, it's what the auto dialer is defined as per law. That's not what that's not what we are, for example, right? But any
Yep.
company out there that is actually relying on opt-in leads, which is opt-in leads, have constantly been looked at as like the gold standard of like lead generation, because it was generally thought to be a safer lead to be able to operate with, right? Because it bypasses DNC and stuff. Well, the reality is that now they have regulations against it. Number one is that they can revoke it a lot easier, and then you no longer can like pass that same lead along to multiple different people. So if you've ever bought an opt-in list, or if you're getting opt-in leads, your right to be able to call them is basically expiring, and now that's going to drive costs up. And that means that if you rely on lead generation done for you, you're in trouble. If you are generating your own leads, you're going to about to enter a golden age. And the reason I say that is because there's people that are getting leads out there that have dramatically been abusing the phone, right? So robocalling, like unwanted text messages, all the, like basically what they've identified, what TCPA and the FCC identified, is that a lot of the unwanted calls and text messages and so on, and the spam and the abuse is coming from from like this loophole in marketing, where people are blowing up people's phones with unwanted stuff, completely ignoring DNC and so on, because they've got this loophole where 5,000 people can destroy somebody's phone, which creates a big problem, right? Because it's a legal way to be able to um, literally just destroy someone's phone. One person called them 1,000 times, and you have nothing wrong with that, right? Because they gave you consent to do so. So that keeps people from answering the phone. Once you eliminate that, that now creates an opportunity where if you've been dialing efficiently, effectively, responsibly, and you've been doing a lot of your own outbound lead generation, this now means you're no longer competing with the spam, right? So
that makes sense. And then I think for those, if we kind of, you said something which I thought was interesting, like those who have been reliant on other people doing their marketing for them are going to have an issue. And the reason they're going to have an issue is because their cost of sale is going to go up dramatically.
their cost of acquisition, right? Yeah,
The cost of acquisition. Yeah, the cost of acquisition is going to go up dramatically in the sense that the lead is going to cost a lot more money. Because if they could make all the money by sending it to a zillion people, but now they can only send it to one, they're going to make up for that with that cost going up a lot. So I was listening to another guy who was in the insurance industry, and he was saying, like, expect that to go up like double
more.
And then, like even more. And then what'll happen is because just like anything else, it'll go up a lot, and then it might come down a little bit and settle.
Well,
at somewhere between like 50 to 70% higher of whatever you were paying currently.
There's always, so here's the cool thing is that marketing is, like you said, marketers ruin almost everything, right?
Yeah.
At some point. But the cool thing is that marketers are also some of the most creative people in the world. That's why they're marketers, right? So they're very creative of finding different solutions to be able to create an ROI. And that's the beauty about being in a country like the US of A, where we have people that work really, really hard to find ways of making money, right? And marketing is a key skill, and it's being able to adapt to a lot of these changes to be able to still get your ROI. The cool thing is that there's a lot of great solutions for this. Number one is being able to generate your own leads. Really quickly, I don't know if you want to answer some of these questions that are that I see.
The other thing I was going to ask you, Angel, if you don't mind talking about, you said something yesterday about consent expiring after like 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, 90 days. I think I heard.
Yeah, I got to get clarification on the specific time frame. I don't want to say anything that may be inaccurate. So everything I've shared so far, I've done deep research on the actual date of when the opt-in expires. My understanding, and I'll clarify, is that you have 3 or 6 months once an opt-in comes in, and then after that opt-in expires. And again, it's to close that loophole of making sure that people don't get abused for life. But the biggest thing is just making sure that it only goes to one person. Because imagine having to opt out of 5,000 different entities and companies.
Yeah. And I think that truthfully, again, having had that experience I did with one of those lead providers, I could totally see from an agent's perspective and the consumer's perspective that this ultimately ends up with a better experience like you were referring to. Now, I also imagine, Angel, so just to make sure that Jason's question get answered, he was like, hey, can you pass a lead to anyone on your team if you have consent?
Yeah.
Like if they consent to to you? Are they consenting to your team members?
Yeah, because remember, so you're getting consent to your company, right? So like, let's say for example,
Got
if
it.
you're Jason Walters LLC, so they're giving the right to Jason Walters LLC and its employees, right? Like it's your people because it's your anybody that represents your entity. However, if you have Jason Walters LLC and then let's say it services Elite Builders, well, Jason Walters has the right to reach out to them, but Elite Builders doesn't. Now, if Jason Walters wanted to give that lead over to Elite Builders, they would have to
We
do
need
a live transfer and then get consent or get some sort of additional consent to notify that person and get them to say, yeah, I'm good with that. Pass me over to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, which is again, it leads to a consumer having a better experience. Like it just does. Instead of getting like harassed by all these different people, and then agents being frustrated that this lead provider gave out the lead source to 8, 10, 15, 20 people. Yeah, I saw a statistic that one of those platforms they sold like something crazy, like triple the amount of leads than there are agents in the United States.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're selling the same lead like to multiple people.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, like something again, it's abused, right? And it's really like bad practices. So especially if you do things that are like responsible dialing, um, it's always kind of crappy, especially like being a consumer, right? So you can be a consumer or a customer of, let's say, a company, a marketing company out there. You're paying them to do marketing for you. They've given you a lead, but because their contracts usually say that they have multiple marketing partners, they can give that same lead out to a million other people and not have any ramifications. You have to trust that they're not doing that, right? But they have.
Which they all are.
Yeah, they do. They'll give that lead over to a million different people. And I can't say that all of them will, but again, the abusers are the ones that are creating an issue because it costs them, let's say, $30 to generate that lead, $50. They sell it to 1,000 people, 5,000 people in that other company's example, right? Um,
Mm.
so, and there's a couple other questions that I also
Yeah.
saw come up that
Go ahead.
tie into some of this stuff. So the does that vary from state to state? So local regulations can be different than federal, right? So the TCPA compliance and the FCC one are federal, right? Those are federal communications commissions. So you can be in, let's say, your local market, and your local market may have different rules that also apply to communications and restrictions. So you want to, again, that's why you want to always have an attorney properly advise you if you think that there may be another rule that you're not aware of. Um, and then as far as it increasing in cost, absolutely, it's an increased cost. If your marketing company that you've been getting leads from was selling you leads that were shared with other people, and they would sell them to you at $50, they were probably generating that lead for $100 and not, you were getting it for 50, but they sent it out to 20 people. Now, if you're the sole person that can get that lead and they're not able to adapt to this new marketing world, that means that they would now have to give it to you at the actual price and make their margin on it. And they're used to making a 70% margin on it, which means your cost, if you're paying $50, could theoretically, if they were selling it to 20 different people, that means it's $50 times 20 plus their margin.
20 plus their margin.
Plus their
Wow.
margin. Yeah.
Dude, it's going to go up dramatically.
Which means
dude.
your conversion's
So,
got to go up like crazy.
Well, no, your cost won't go up. The reality is that company's just out of business. So you just
Oh,
don't
that
have
company
a
will just
lead
go out.
provider anymore
Not
because
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to make a return
Yeah.
on it, and they wouldn't be able to sell you to you for very long because you won't be able to get enough to convert to make sense. So that company,
Yeah, and most agents don't have the resources to be able to like buy leads that way. So somebody else said if we're creating our own list of expireds for sale by owner, circle prospecting, probates, that one. And we're not dropping robocalls and not doing callback messages.
so
Is everything still the same?
Let me make sure we do not drop robo voicemail or callback messages. Everything's still the same. Essentially, yes. So as long as you're not doing any of the things that are classified and restricted against TCPA, then yeah, you're still good. This law is,
And as long as you're not using a dialing system that has those features, correct?
yeah, if it has those features, it also puts you at risk because there's a lot of things that are also vague in verbiage that create risk, right? So even though, let's say, for example, case law can support one thing. That doesn't mean that that it's the end all be all, right? So there's vague communication and descriptions on when the platform has the ability to do it, which creates risk. And this is how it was explained to me by my attorney. And they were very clear with me because they had me go through a different checklist of what my system does and what it does not. One of the big questions that they asked me was, does your system provide the ability to be able to drop voicemails and so on? We
Mm,
purposely did not build that in because it's illegal. And we said no. And that he says, fantastic. Make sure you keep it that way. Drop voicemails, pre-recorded messages of any kind put you at risk, especially when you're doing cold prospecting where you have no relationship with that person.
makes sense. So if somebody's pulling their own lists and they're not using a
You missed
dialing
one.
system that has those features, then you should be okay.
Yeah, and then Happy New Year's, guys. Angel, what will the enforcement of these rules look like, and will it really stop non-compliant callers? In your opinion, I think it will. I think it's going to definitely stop them because think about it. You've got some of the biggest companies out there in the world that are actually like. If you think you're making a lot of calls, think about how many calls like Zillow's making, or your local mortgage company or the big mortgage companies are making. These guys are aggressive as heck. They're just getting their leads in a different manner, right? They're getting the opt-in, right, from a marketing partner that's dramatically abusing their consent, and then selling that same lead to multiple different people. Now they now got the green light and are blowing people up like crazy. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had my phone blowing up, which I do at times, getting freaking hundreds of phone calls a day, I'm going to stop answering this phone, right? Now, the cool thing is that big companies, right, big public companies, they can't operate like that, right? You can't just now that this rule changes, you can't just continue with the same practices and dramatically abuse that opt-in law, right? So that now reduces. They're not going to operate under those same circumstances, which means that those calls are going to dramatically reduce. Which also provides a new opportunity where people are now answering their phone more often because they're not being abused like they were in the past.
Yes. And then I also think, like, as you were speaking, that as a result, those who are compliant and are utilizing systems that are compliant, if the answer rate goes up and you're skilled, your conversion rate should go up as well.
Yeah, well,
Your ability, yeah,
your ability to convert is still up to your skill, right? So that's where you
yeah,
need to you need to make sure that you stay polished and skilled. But I can tell you this, right? Like, what is annoying? Is it annoying when you get a phone call from a robot that's saying, "Hey, you just won this," or auto warranty, blah 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 blah, or "Hey, your new loan rate is this." Press one to connect to somebody. Is that annoying? Especially when they're dialing you 3, 4, 5 times in an hour, right? Or when someone talks to you and they actually connect, right? Like they connect quickly and they're like, "Hey, John, I was calling because of X." Which one of the two is more annoying, and which one of the two is more abusive,
mm,
and which one is most likely to convert? The human being has always
well,
been more likely to convert, and it's
yeah. The
always
human being's going to convert
than the
way better.
yeah.
Yeah, and then to go back, what I also think is interesting, where he was like, "Hey, do you think this will really like cause it to go down?" The answer is yes, because of fines. So if you do this at scale, like Angel was trying to paint a picture of just how many. I think it's so many that it's hard for us to comprehend. But if you're not compliant, it can be like a $50 fine per.
50?
So let's
No,
say,
no,
yeah,
no, 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 way higher.
way higher. But let's say it's a bunch of money, however much it is. But let's say you're ripping through like, you're making 10,000
How
phone
much is
calls in
way
a day
higher,
or
Angel?
whatever it is, or 20,000. That fine could be enormous.
Yeah, it's about 10 to 30 times higher.
Okay. So it's a lot. So to answer that question, it's like, yeah, you think this is really going to stop it? Yeah, because the teeth are strong enough to make it stop.
Yeah. Well, think about it. Every dial, not connected call, every dial that's done illegally without if you're abusing that opt-in law, is a fine that's potentially $500 to $1,500 approximately.
Yeah.
Again,
And
get your legal advice and and stuff from an attorney, but
from an attorney.
yeah.
And then what I also think is interesting is these CRMs. So like I was listening to this other guy and he said like there's these interesting things come up, like making sure you don't have duplicates. Because let's say somebody opted in 90 days ago, but it showed like it's a duplicate in your system and you call them after 90 days, that could be like an issue. Making sure that that's being scrubbed out of your CRM, making sure that you're clear on the time when somebody opted in. So
Yep,
that
you
way
have
you're
to keep
not
good record of
passing
it,
it.
and you have 10
So
business days to remove it.
like
And make sure
dialing
that they don't
systems and
get any
CRMs
more
oftentimes
from
are
you.
different. And oftentimes for agents, sometimes because they're not technologically savvy, they're not connected.
Mhm.
So making sure that whatever dialing system that you're using, which again, if you're using a big, the dialing systems with a high degree of probability will just change their rules so that way, or features so that way they're compliant. But there's another layer to that in the sense that you have to make sure your CRM is compliant or is clearing out the data and cleaning it up to prevent you from, perhaps reaching out to somebody who opted in 6 months ago or a year ago and it was a duplicate in your system and then you call them again.
Yeah.
And just making sure the features are like set up and working properly.
Yeah. And a lot of it is like being able to just understand. So like good marketers are aware of how to navigate through things. They're aware of different laws that are coming up. They're aware of different trends that are creating more juice. And as a agent, right? So agents is the primary audience that you have likely here. They just need to be aware. They're all great marketers, right? If you're in business as an agent, you have to be a great marketer. It's almost like a requirement, whether you're prospecting on your own, whether you're creating direct mail pieces, regardless of what you're doing, you have to be aware of how to properly market to be able to create an ROI. So it means getting creative with your marketing messages and being able to create and maintain opt-ins with your people once you've gotten the initial opt-in, all that stuff. And then using technology tools that allow you to do it, right? From your CRM to your outbound dialing platform.
Makes sense. Eric asked, does the Enzo dialer sync with Follow Up Boss?
We have an integration with Follow Up Boss, yeah.
Good. All right. So I dropped the link, Eric, if you want to have a conversation with his company. He said, Jason Walters, who's also kind of one of our tech people at Elite Builders, he said also scrub for reassigned phone numbers. I don't know what that means.
Okay. Well, okay. So let me see. Where was that question?
He said also scrub for reassigned phone numbers.
To reassigned phone numbers. I'm not sure what that means here. Oh, and then also another thing to keep in mind is that all of this stuff goes to, this is additional protection to the DNC, right? So if someone's not on the DNC, again, same thing, you also have more ability to be able to reach out to them, without prior consent. When you're in the DNC and then you reach out to somebody that didn't give you consent, that's where you run into an issue. So
he says reassigned is when people change their phone numbers. That's interesting.
Oh yeah.
So having a system that allows, like if somebody opted in with one phone number and it passed 90 days and they changed their phone number, making sure that your CRM is scrubbing for that.
Yeah, and then it's scrubbing for it. I think I don't know if it's a question or if he's telling us something here, but
it seems like he's telling us is what it seems like.
Okay. Because I was going to say when it comes to like a contact, right? Like when someone opts in to receive marketing from you, I'd have to double check because I think that's a pretty good question whether you have the ability to contact them through more than just their cell phone, right? So if you want to look up their landline and I'll call them on their landline, do you have the right to be able to call their landline, right? So what is what number are you now able to call? I'll actually clarify that and get back to you on it because that's a good question. Let's see. There were some other questions up on the top that I think we jumped over. So let me see. So no more ISA companies that are not in-house. Again, that I believe that depends on what that ISA company is doing, right? So like if an ISA company that's external, what is the ISA company? So I'll give you an example. We help people out with making calls, but what that person that we hire, they're working for you essentially through us. So you've hired us to basically work and represent your company. So it's still, if the company is still if the ISA company is representing your company, it's still essentially you that's reaching out to them, right? Because it's on behalf of Jason Walters. Now, if you're, but they're employing, like you've employed that ISA company. If you have a marketing company, like let's say for example, if you're a marketing company and then Elite Builders is your client, they're not your employee. They're your customer that you're sending marketing to. So there's I think there's a difference of like how you. The answer would be based off of what that ISA company is doing and how they're representing your company, or if they're representing your company. How does this affect wholesaling and putting someone's address into express offers? I don't understand the question. What is
So there's a
into?
platform called Express Offers where you can request cash offers, basically, I think is what he's asking.
Oh, well, it would be the same thing again. So like with opt-ins, someone has to opt in to whichever company reaches out to them. So if, let's say, for example, I'm a customer, I'm a homeowner that wants to go in and get some offers from different companies. Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and take a look at the different companies. And now let me choose which companies I'm okay with getting communication back from. And you have to disclose to me which companies you're sending this out to. And then I have to agree to each individual company. Now, if it's one company and it's on there, it says, okay, I'm going to allow Elite Builders LLC to reach out to me. Okay, cool. Well, that's the person that's supposed to be reaching out. All good. If it's multiple people, every single one of them needs to be opted into. Like probate leads. I don't know if that was a question there. So if we're creating our own list, okay, so that one we've already answered. Do I know if Vulcan 7 to be a compliant dialing system? As long, again, the rules are set based off of what they define as an auto dialer. If Vulcan 7 is not providing the like generating the phone numbers to dial, then it should be okay. I believe they do provide data. So there may be some vagueness in there, but I don't believe that it would qualify as an auto dialer because it's not
Randomly.
randomly generating the phone numbers. So guys are saying the prices of like neighborhood searches or expired or those types of leads on Mojo and Vulcan are going to skyrocket. No. Those are data records. Those are not leads that have opted in. So usually expireds haven't said, hey, have 100 realtors call me now. Now that my property's not on the market, they did not opt into that. So they're just providing a data record that is not that is not what's being attacked by this new TCPA regulation. Oh, so yeah. So Jason Walters clarified what he was saying earlier. So he said, so if a person gave you consent but changed their number and you accidentally call that number again, but it belongs to a new person that didn't give consent. Yeah. So that when you call them, you'll find out that they were the wrong person, and then yeah, you would clean your system. You have 10 business days to fix any issues when someone didn't give you consent, and then also you're supposed to keep an updated file of the DNC records if you're making calls and stuff like that. So they say that I believe it's 30 days. Every 30 days you have to update it. And again, there's state and then there's federal changes.
Yeah, and the guy I was listening to, he also said like if you create just like you did for the DNC, but you create kind of like a document showing that you've really done your best to attempt to be compliant, that's an intelligent thing to do.
Yeah,
That if somebody came to you, you could be like, look, here's our protocol, here's what we did, here's what we do with our CRM to scrub out anybody who is beyond the 90-day time frame or whatever the time frame is, and here's what we do with the DNC, and here's how we handle opt-ins, and here's what we do with the leads. If you have like a actual kind of process or procedure that you could show somebody, that is an intelligent thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always number one is, again, being aware. And then a lot of this stuff sometimes is a little bit difficult. The cool thing is that a lot of systems out there are usually like already have practices in place that help protect the customer, to make sure that you're doing things the right way. I know that for us, we do quite a bit of things in the back end to make sure that we help protect you from, jumping off of a cliff by just doing things without realizing it. So we have like restrictions on how many times you can call the same person back. in our system. You also have different restrictions on, like, once you've marked someone as a DNC, like, it is hard. It is impossible to make another call to that person again. And then there's certain people that are like serial litigators that have made it very clear that they do not want to be receiving a communication. We basically, we keep a log of that ourselves, and basically integrate it into all customers dialing to make sure that they're not able to even dial those customers again.
That's wild, bro. So it's like it's like a hit list. Like you're basically doing that on their behalf to protect them.
Yeah, I mean, first thing is that those people are oftentimes in the DNC, and then they've also have made it extremely clear that they don't want to receive calls from other people. And we know that sometimes people are making phone calls, and sometimes they'll make a mistake and call somebody that they shouldn't have. So we've implemented that in our back end to make sure that people aren't calling, serial litigators that are trying to create and catch people doing things that they're not supposed to be doing by mistake, right? So, like, let's say, for example, there's people out there that purposely will exploit a lot of the TCPA rules in the other way, right? There's marketers that do bad practices, and then there's consumers out there that also do bad practices. Like, they'll do certain things to be able to put themselves in a position where they will get phone calls to catch people doing things that they shouldn't be doing, right? And they're taking advantage of, let's say, like, the differences between local laws and then federal laws, and the lack of knowledge of certain people that are making calls. So certain things like that.
Yeah, makes sense. And then I see one question here. Do you see that pop up?
If it's a lead gen company that calls for you but calls under their company name and then transfers a lead to you one-to-one, do they need to start using my company name instead of their company name? So a lead generation company can like basically get an opt-in from the consumer to provide the information over to you. So that, like, let's say, for example, if Zillow gets an opt-in and they transfer the call over to you as an agent, they have, like, you can get marketing consent for El Dorado Placer, Sacramento County Realtor LLC, right? For example, right? Or let's just say Elite Builders. Let's say I'm a marketing company. I can put on my marketing company, you're going to be getting a call from Elite Builders LLC. And that's the little checkbox that they would hit, and then they provide consent. Same thing if you have a lead gen company or a company that's making calls for you. If they've received an opt-in and they say, hey, this person will reach back out to you. We're a different company, but this is the person that will actually reach back out to you. That would be your form of opt-in.
Makes sense. And what I'm aware of too, guys, as we're having this conversation, a lot of these businesses, whether they be dialing systems like the Enzo dialer, or they are CRMs like Follow Up Boss or whatever it is that you're using, these are all comprised usually of very smart, hardworking, integrous people that will come up with solutions for their product, right? They're not going to willfully and intentionally, with a high degree of probability, let you be like not compliant. So just pay attention as this rolls out, because the rules don't go into effect, to my knowledge and my understanding, Angel, until like June 25th or something like that, or excuse me, January 25th.
They go in effect in January, the end of January. So I think it's the 26th or the 25th or something.
Yeah. So essentially, like, look out for whatever system you're using to make calls. Look out for your CRMs beginning to either create features or delete features to help you to be as compliant as possible. But it also makes sense for you to educate yourself. That's why we wanted to do this together as a team. Hop on and just go right to the source of somebody's whose business it is to understand this stuff. So we appreciate you, brother, spending some time with us today for sure. Jose was just watching me and you talk. That's all he was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think I think he always provides valuable insights, and he's the only one wearing a tie, so he made us professional.
Apparently, he makes us look legitimate.
Yeah, he's got the legitimate setup.
Yeah, I'm just here fantastic. To increase the looks on the call, to make it like somewhat appealing for the audience,
Wow, wow. Wow, that's what we're
Thank you
doing.
for being the attractive one, Jose.
Yeah, and here's what's dope. Drop in the chat if this has been helpful or useful to you. If you're still hanging out, we've had a bunch of people hang out here for an extended period of time, and Angel's actually going to be with us in Fort Lauderdale in February for the Do More Deals Summit. You want to meet him in person, shake his hand, ask any questions that you want. You can use the QR code that's up there right now to get your ticket. It's going to be just an amazing event. Jose will be in the room as well.
Just for the
I'll be
looks.
there, so you can come up and say, just for the looks. That's all we keep him for. And yeah, and be sure to get your ticket. It's going to be an amazing event. We'll have some of the best, absolute best kind of minds in the real estate space in that room, really to equip you with everything you need so you can continue to get your unfair share. That's what we do here. So yeah, appreciate you, Angel. Anything else to add, Angel or Jose?
Anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. You can find me on Instagram, or you can just go to Enzo Dialer, www.enzodialer.com. You got to make sure you add that www in the front. And then talk to our team if you wanted to basically take advantage of the new opportunity that's about to hit after January 25th, because that's when you'll start seeing a dramatic reduction in competition.
Yeah, and I would propose that there's two things to focus on there. One is what Angel's speaking about. The second is making sure that your skills are tip top. And that's an area that we can definitely help you with as well here at the Elite Builders. So we appreciate you guys. Let's go be great and look forward to reconnecting soon.
Peace out, guys.
Take care, guys.